Buenas tardes. Pues empieza la segunda sesión de esta tarde.
We're going to start the afternoon session and the last one in our conference. This time we have a very diverse panel following the cross-sectional spirit of the conference. We will be starting with Álvarez Pérez, an oceanographer based in the Spanish Oceanographic Institute of Málaga, now located in Fuengirola, but they are going to move to Málaga. And apart from being here, we've got to thank him because tomorrow he will be our host at the Oceanographic Institute of Málaga, and I think we will be enjoying a wonderful day there. I'm not going to speak about his curriculum because of time, but I would advise you to check it out in the internet because he combines oceanography and history, that which is going to be reflected in his history, and also how oceanography will be depicted and also his speech will serve as an introduction to the main challenges the Mediterranean Sea is facing and how science can help us face them. Now we will be listening to Tovar, who will be dealing with one of the main challenges of the Mediterranean Sea, specifically pollution. And out of what I've been able to check with regards his knowledge, I think maybe some of you will have watered down that wish of going to the beach in summer. So maybe you will have to close your eyes. And then we have Antonio Marina, who works for the Spanish High Research Council in Cádiz. And then we will be listening to Emilia Guisado, who will be dealing with the coastal ordnance and how to defend the coastline against storms, etc. Emilia is a lecturer at the University of Sevilla. She works for the Department of Geography, and we're very happy to have her with us at this panel session. So let's start. Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for your kind invitation. I would like to thank Lino Camprubí. And I'm going to start my talk. The title is on the screen and deals with the monitoring and protection of the marine environment and its resources. Basically, it's focused on these three pillars. The first one being, well, I'm going to explain Spain's marine strategies, ocean research. The picture shows you the integration of all scientific documents we have to get hold of on a specific geographical area in order to apply mathematical models, predictive models, and generate the corresponding images and ask questions on the model. And as an example, we as specialized investigators you've got this picture on 2021 on the resources of the marine environment, and then I'm going to deal with coastal management and multidisciplinary data will be delivered, and also data on societal and financial aspects. And Emilia will go on dealing with the information drawn from her own research in the marine terrestrial environment. Marine Areas project is one of the most important, and it's been large lately. And if any one of you would like to have more information, you've got more information in the website of the Spanish Ministry for Ecological Transition. There are different indexes referring to the healthcare, and those areas which are mostly interesting for us, are the Alboran Sea and the Levantine. And most of these elements are related to water pollution, marine noise, pollutants in fishing products, hydrological alteration, and eutrophisation. And with regards to pollution, Antonio will be dealing with that subject. That's his subject as of today. And these regions, the Levantine Balearic region, are some interesting index species, but they are not enough for the use of mathematical predictive models. And in this book, it's got 24 chapters, one of them dealing with meteorology and oceanography. And on top of that, you've got some diagrams on the currents in the Alboran Sea. Below you have an image on the nutrients, which is inorganic nutrients. And on the right-hand side, you may see temperature profiles. And the most interesting one is salinity down to 100 meters with that big volume of seawater in red, which corresponds to the highest salt concentration belonging to the deeper Mediterranean water going out to the Atlantic, whereas on the surface we're getting Atlantic water getting into the Mediterranean. There's also these 3D maps generated on the seabeds. You don't need to have a submarine to go down to these depths and look into the into the topography. That navigation chart help us to understand. But with acoustic methods from geologists, you can draw these maps with these 3D colorful bathymetry. And also you've got to classify and do an inventory of all the fauna, or the invertebrates. There's another chapter on the maritime land area, the different habitats, the classification of all species, both the pelagic ones, which are the ones which do not live on the seabed, and other species, bentonic or immersal, which live either on the seabed or underneath the sediments. And then there's another chapter on historic research. The one on top, the colleague writing this paper, Elena Giraldez, collected the fishing captures of small pelagic species in the Alboran Sea, such as the sardine and the anchovy, and dealt with the recovery of fisheries since 1995. We many times think that we do not collect historic data, which we won't have an idea on the abundance of each of the species and on the fluctuation. And then we include this image of different species that were considered to be Gibraltarian marine monsters. These are interesting piece of information which helps us highlight social and educational aspects belonging to different areas. Now we can see a listing, and we may see the difference between trophic chains, how the models are generated, and underneath we may see the current approach, which is the work on ecosystem, that is, considering all species as a whole and not in an isolated fashion. And this would be the idea. In order to create this network, this trophical network, and design it with all these arrows, we need to know which are the links, that is the traffic line, which is linear. You may see from plankton to smaller fish, bigger fish, and then the fishing boat, that is, mankind is on top of this traffic chain. And when you have the whole of these traffic chains of all the species, we may create the traffic chain underneath. Ecosystem-oriented models help us ask questions having to do with, for example, human activities, pollution, excess fishing, tourism, and also with the climatic variability, and ask the system on the exotic invasive species. These images are taken from the paper that you can see on the side, and it's also available on the internet, and you can have an idea on how, if we overlap oceanographic information on the seabeds and the interaction among the different species in each of the study zones, we may apply at that specific zone the mathematical model. I searched for this example in the Strait of Sicily, and for you to have an idea, with regards to traffic network, we only used information from the 2004-2005 period. Information is coming from depths running from 10 to 800 meters. In order to integrate the fishing information, specialists took into account 18 fleet segments fishing in these Italian seas, and the biological information went from bacteria to the large pelagic species, and that amounted to about 72 functional groups. And below you may see the most important conclusions of the work, and as of before, it is available in the internet for anyone wanting to get deeper into this mathematical model, the eco-path. The information generated out of the two examples with this amount of lines and informational dots, and then the interpretation is quite complex. The last part of this presentation is also available at the presentation of Feigl on the information of the ecosystems, science, society, and the economy. So it envisages that information and follow-up makes fishing, tourism, and nautical sports compatible and sustainable. And this is the slide I placed before. On the left-hand side, you have the coastal line. Only the captures, which are unpredictable year after year, are taken into account. And on the right-hand side, an ideal image through which adequate models that benefits for fishermen, coastal communities, etc. This is another book that we are about to finish in order to publish it in September, and we're doing the same as in the book before. Research is from different institutions. We have centered it around the Strait of Gibraltar. It is 111 chapters with different authors, and we analyze all kinds of examples. we're referring to the Strait of Gibraltar as a natural key between two continents and two seas, and we include information on the geology of the seabeds, which is a very complex geology. And as in the book before, there was a need for an inventory of both the fauna and flora of both the beaches and the seabeds, and knowing the circulation of the waters of the Atlantic water in the Gulf of Cádiz entering through the Strait of Gibraltar, the populations of tuna fish, the fishing catches, and this is just a fast perspective on how ocean research, including resources and fishing, can be oriented towards ocean planning, coastal planning, and that of marine resources in order to do a follow-up of them and allow for an adequate management. Thank you.
Preguntas.
He dado por supuesto que íbamos a tener preguntas todos juntos al final. Si no os molesta mucho, mejor, ¿no?
Creo que Alberto ha puesto la mía.
Ah, Alberto, ahora va Antonio, perdón. Antonio Tovar.
La derecha.
Sí, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. Before further ado, thank you very much, Professor Lino, colleagues, and fellow researchers here. At the beginning, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be on archaeology, history, so I fully didn't understand how my profile was fitting in with the rest of experts. And yesterday, together with my institute, I had to be there, so I couldn't come, so I'm regretting I couldn't be here yesterday. So we always learn from each other. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure. I would love to thank the translators, our interpreters. I really don't know how they manage, because we all have different dialects, and it's amazing. They seem to have superpowers. I'll try to make their life easier. Right, today I'm here to talk a little bit about pollution. We've decided to talk about sunscreen as this unknown emergent polluting agent. Please don't be scared in the sense that there are some tricky issues that I may not have an answer for. Let me tell you and begin with some features which make the Mediterranean area unique. It attracts plenty of tourism, but it's also very sensitive to all sorts of polluting agents. The two things are really interwoven, and they have similar causes. This is one of the largest seas, and its features, as for morphology, biology, etc., make it really special. It's a semi-enclosed basin, which means that the water volume is only exchanged through these strait that you well know, the Strait of Gibraltar, which is only 13 kilometers wide. All water between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean is changed there, so the time the body of water remains in the Mediterranean basin is huge. Here you have an example. Approximately 4 years it takes on the western area and around 8 or 7 years on the eastern side. As for salinity, Juan has already mentioned it, and some other colleagues too. The salinity is very high, and so is the temperature. This makes the Mediterranean to have hotspot characteristics. They are hotspot biodiversity areas. There are very few in the world. Concentrations as for phosphor, we don't have phytoplankton. And how do we translate this, or what can we say? Well, due to these phosphorus features, We know that the waters in the Mediterranean are characterized because they are oligotrophic and sometimes ultra-oligotrophic. They are very transparent. This means that all nutrients has quickly an answer. It could be a huge growth of algae or some other negative consequences because everything was in perfect equilibrium before. And here you can see a map, of the 10 countries which are most visited by tourists. And if you analyze the Mediterranean area, plenty of our countries around the Mediterranean basin attract these tourists, most of them, like France and Spain. We see that between France, Italy, Turkey, Greece, Tunisia, etc., we reach 340 million of tourists every year. It's equivalent to the US population every single year coming to our coastline. A large percentage of them actually do stay, around 50 or 70% during the summer. They stay on the coast, around 3 tourists per linear meter of our beaches. This has a huge amount of serious consequences, as you can imagine. Also, the impact Spain has witnessed some crisis, of course, and economic crisis, we mean, and we must focus on making our tourism sustainable. So it plays a very crucial role in the Spanish economy. We enjoy it, and usually, almost always, we try to activate our economy from the coastline backwards, quality of tourism, hotels, quality of air, etc. But very randomly, we focus on the quality of our waters. And if this is deteriorated, if the quality of our waters decreases, this is going to affect our tourism. We're not living facing backwards to the sea, but we must be aware of whatever it happens. So great for tourism. It's a magic economic activity that we must maintain in a sustainable manner, because if we don't do this, our tourism sector is definitely going to suffer. Related to tourism, also plenty of impacts over super exploitation of aquifers in sandy beaches, on our coastline, etc. But also aging of our population. In our country, let's remember we're number 1. Also using plenty of beauty products and sunscreens, specifically in our country. This is a major problem. Also, we need to remember all the hygiene products too. They are emergent polluting agents. Why? Because they're not being measured on a routine basis as minerals and metals and other elements are being measured. Sometimes when we started working on sunscreens, yes, we did measure certain components of these sunscreen lotions on our waters. You know that they have micro and nanoparticles or nanoplastics. And as an example, to highlight the importance as for their quantitative importance, some of them have more plastic components than the actual bottle or container. This happens in hygiene products, sunscreens, and other beauty creams or sprays. What sort of components do we find? They are myriad, more than 100 or 200. We'll never know it because it's a trademark, it's commercial secret. We can talk about with Isden, Nivea, etc. They never, however, tell you the exact chemical composition. They can shed some light, for example, the organic filters and the inorganic filters. They're the only type of filters that sunscreen has, and they are only 10 or 20% of the total composition. The rest are silicones, powders, thickeners, etc., waxes. So surely, if we analyze them under a microphone, we will see they're toxic. And we're testing the whole of the spray or cream so that we don't pinpoint one single guilty product. So all UVV filters or UVA filters, nitrates, silicons, polyurethanes, etc. As for unorganic, the titanium inorganic and the zinc zinc oxide and the titanium oxide sometimes are contained in one of the filters, or sometimes they're mixed, or whatever is allowed, depending on the lab, the manufacturer's formulation. This slide will tell you about the titanium dioxide. Is the most used one as inorganic filter. It has a specificity. When the UV it becomes peroxide, and this actually has some consequences because it oxidates plenty of things. If you show this product in an open tank, this is one of the purification plant, treatment plant, and this could cause cancer. Long ago, it was spread on the screen, and it's true that it reflected UV radiation, but it produced peroxide and it caused cancer. So we did find out, and we did something that's still being done, which is cover it with a tiny layer of alumina or silica or zirconium. And up to there, everything so far so good. What happened? We studied the impact on the environment, and once these particles penetrate water and nature, this aluminium, zirconium, or whatever layer dissolves immediately, and these nanoparticles of titanium oxide is reactive. It becomes reactive in water. So what happens once you bath, you get into the water and comes out? Well, that depends on the labs, and in medical congresses at the moment they are evaluating such things. We analyze it from an environmental perspective, but we understand that if you submerge into the sea, these particles will reach phytoplankton, and whatever matter was touching your skin and it becomes later peroxide, it's obviously an issue. So I really hope they're working on these formulations. We've published plenty of papers. It's very frustrating because it happens in all sort of research. We're always a little bit behind with respect to what's happening. How long have we been using sunscreen all over the world in the beach? We know that in all the eggs in the Doñana Natural Park, in the Antarctic penguins, there are also substances coming from sunscreen. Always, it's the case everywhere. So you see the dispersion is global. We are trying, not unfortunately to solve the matter, but as I said, to at least talk about it. As for its transformation, accumulation, distribution, etc., all these are issues we must study. We know that they're in the liver of dolphins, plenty of fish, and we will eat those fish. And it'll, all this has been already written in a myriad of papers. All these questions must be answered. And quickly, I will jump onto the last part of my presentation. We keep feeling frustrating. Unfortunately, we're very slow. Science is too slow, and this issue is a major one for everybody. We go to the Mediterranean, we choose 3, 10, or 20 different spots, and the information we can gather is very limited. And this has made us to start thinking of new technologies. Sometimes they offer great, precise, accurate information, and in other occasions are semi-quantitative. So we've started using drones. And what we do is add a certain type of sensors or detectors. We did it with sunscreen, and in the latest slide you will see we have started applying them, using them in plenty of our research because it's cheaper, faster, and more accurate. It has some limitations, of course. What do we have? At the moment, we have this unit with all these different models of drones. You can see there are a program by Canal Sur. It's live tomorrow, actually, on the project by the Andalusian government. It's called Tourist Drone, which tries to analyze the impact that the tourism exerts on coastline so that regional governments and municipalities have some data as for nanoplastic particles, amount of tourists on the shoreline, etc. So they have these parameters, and on real time they can mark the sort of environmental stress and red flag it, for example, so that they can take actions. We wonder whether maybe the access to certain beaches could be limited. This is the main goal of this project. I've also added a few examples, but I won't delve too much into detail. We've started working on this only 2 years ago, so imagine the huge amount of information we're gathering very, very quickly with these sensors on the drones. This is the internal bay of Cádiz, and with this multispectral 10-channel drone, we now can use it with 40 minutes with one drone. Before it took 10 months and plenty of divers. This was the seagrass meadows area around Cádiz. And another example, Rugodolopteris, this invasive alien species damaging the Andalusian coast, especially against the fishing industry. Up to now, we could analyze this species. We're seeing its distribution. It's related to it's a brown, this Rugolopteryx okamurai, it's a brown algae species, an alien one. Another case, trying to monitor and sample waters, we have tried to see when lava acts as water and it generates steam, obviously sheeps, when volcanic eruption happens, like the one in La Palma in 2021. Thanks to this sampling system, we managed to sample certain inaccessible areas. We could see the diameter of the front of the lava, etc. In the Antarctic, we were before manually counting these birds, penguins. We imagined a square and then you extrapolated it. But now with artificial intelligence, you can take a picture thanks to a drone and you can know exactly the amount of birds. We're sampling water, for example, thanks to Drone Tools, the civilian company. And this system, what it does, it's pretty simple. It has a pressure sensor. And you will see it from close. It touches the water. It has a peristaltic pump, and it obtains this sample of water. We faced some difficulties because we were in the Johnson Glacier, and it's forbidden to reach it too close because it could be too dangerous. So we managed to obtain very unique samples, which would have been simply impossible before. So thanks to technologies these days, we believe that we are really advancing in very specific topics and tasks. The Juan Carlos I in the Livingston Island, it's 2 kilometers away from where we are using our drones in the Antarctic. So you see options are infinite. If you have any questions, from an environmental question. I'm sure that with the right sensor and the drone, you will be able to answer it relatively easily. Again, counting of penguins and the ecosystem of the penguin habitat. Oh, the penguin colony. And the tourist drone, which was the original one in this presentation. Back to the sunscreen, we've used more than 40. We've done, thanks to spectrometry, and we've seen that they have with 303 nanometers was the result. So this spectrometer, thanks to a drone, it could map all over the beaches the amount of sunscreen being applied, where it comes from, how it's being distributed, and this is basically it. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Pues ahora Emilia Guisado.
Thanks very much. Now prepare the PowerPoint for Emilia Guisado. In the meantime, I would like to thank Lino for having invited me. I think it's a very interesting forum and I'm learning a lot. And I hope I can provide you with some information, because I'm going to speak about coastal erosion, especially with regards to the Mediterranean, from the point of view of what's happening and how we can monitor and manage it. Before anything else, the coastal line, that transition area, it's a very complex area, as all transition areas, and is also influenced by marine and terrestrial processes, and it's at that place where the dynamics of its context is subjected to a constant change. Of course, that has an influence in how the coastal line is out there. For example, the emerge coastal line is almost lost in Malaga, or the delta of the Llobregat River, with the opening of those two sides of the harbour, or for example the delta of the Ebro River. You've got two Landsat pictures from 1994. Between 1994 and 1984 and 2021, you may see how the delta has been changing, and also the amount of sediments which were moving in that area that we refer to as the intermario. The Mediterranean shore, apart from being a coast, makes of it an unique ecosystem with a great value in terms of landscape and natural resources, not just in terms of marine species, many endemic species. And a proof of that, about 8.33% of the Mediterranean is protected under some legal title designation. Some of them are marine protected areas, or especially areas of special interest. But the Mediterranean Sea is that, but also these, as Antonio was saying, is a very densely populated coast with many visitors. About 40% of the population of the neighboring countries live close to the coastline, with developing activities of very different kinds: tourism, agriculture, farming, aquaculture, urban development, especially from the 50s up to now, up to present time. So these attractive brings it into a biodiversity hotspot, and also a hotspot for tourism. And since the beginning of the 60s, experienced an increase. And there are works, there are papers saying that for 2025 there will be some 650,000 tourists which will be visiting some spot in the Mediterranean shoreline. And these got many consequences, as it's been mentioned before. I'm going to focus on coastal erosion. I'm sure most of you have listened to people speaking about coastal erosion or have seen it some of the beaches you visit. Coastal erosion is a natural process and is the way in which beaches are regulated. It entails a loss of sediment taken up by the sea, that is, the sea advances and the coastal line retracts. But that coastal erosion, as a natural process, can be increased or promoted by many other variables which create an imbalance, and that retraction of the coast is accentuated. This is the past and the present of what's happening in the Mediterranean shoreline since the mid of the 20th century. This acceleration of coastal erosion was mainly caused by urban development on the first line of the row houses on the beach. I don't think there's a square meter without which not developed. Of course, hydraulic infrastructure serving all that population already living close to the coastline and needing water, the building of dams with capturing of all those sediments which previously ended up in the sea and allowed for a regeneration of the system, and all the works serving the tourist industry. Of course, we've got to thank it because it's one of the main sources of income for the country, for Spain. But it's got a series of impacts and consequences such as coastal erosion. But this is not something new. Around 2004, a very strong project, maybe the most interesting project in terms of erosion, which was referred to as erosion, that is, coexisting with erosion, coastal erosion. It was a problem and we had to learn how to live with it. By 2001, some 7,600 kilometers were affected by projects fighting against erosion, and we were already fighting against that. And if you look into the map, this is from 2006, and around that time, we're talking about some 20 years ago, most of the coast was marked in red, that is, that was intensely affected by erosion. There were only some stretches of it stable in blue with no erosion problems, and some of them there was an advance in the coastline because of engineering coast, those harbors which increase the beach locally, increase the beach area. And this project already highlighted a series of things which can be applied to what's happening as of today. The reduction of those coastal sediments, especially because of the urban development, they have created a situation through which the coastline is suffering. But also it is highlighted that what we've done so far, the methods we've applied in order to put an arrest to erosion, are counterproductive. Some of them solve local problems but generate secondary problems in neighboring areas. And this is quite interesting because the Mediterranean is a closed basin. It's an area where whatever is done in a country will have an influence on neighboring countries, and you can see it very clearly. I build a port and I'm generating an erosion in the beach nearby. So it's also a social problem. And also this report showed that there were many more data, that knowledge was accumulating, but there was a problem in terms of the transfer of that data to decision makers. and also to the general population. The population going to the beaches and knowing that there's a problem in the beach, but they do not know what's going on. And what is it that we've done so far? How have we been fighting against coastal erosion? There are two big solutions. For example, hardcore solutions. For example, I create a dam, I create a bank, so that beach accumulates sediments, so erosion is decreased. And of course, that has got consequences of its own. You may see an example here. This is from Molina in 2019, and she shows that in 1956, the first black and white picture available on the area of Marbella, Puerto Banús, which is a high-standing seasonal resort. There was no hardcore engineering there. In 1997, the marina was built, so the ships and the yachts from vessels could be harbored there, and the first dams were built. And in 2001, the first piece of work built, the first piers were built, and in 2010 a new pier was built. So in the end, it's kind of adding makeshift solutions which create erosion in varying areas. And what is it that is happening in that area? In red, you may see the coastal line of 1956, the shoreline, and 2017. These breakwaters, some 40 years later, created a recessing of the sediments of up to 100 meters in this area of Malaga. Also, you've got the soft core techniques, which are mainly based in the regeneration of the shoreline. That is, let's get sand somewhere else, and let's try and make that beach grow again. Of course, they are not as invasive as the hardcore techniques, because you're adding sand, but of course, this has not only got a financial impact. The investment can be huge, but also they have an environmental impact, because depending on where you get the sand from, you will be creating damage in the depths of the sea, or at the quarry, or maybe you are introducing a foreign agent that the system will have to take care of later on in order to reach some balance. What would the future be? We all know that what are we going towards is not better than what we are coming from. And especially, and of course, we've got to take the climate change into account. And the coastal erosion is right there in the hotspot. And according to the forecasts you all know from the Intergovernmental Climate Change Panel, we're talking about an increase in the frequency of storms, and the first line of the coast, the first front of battle will be at the beaches. They will have to adjust to that new energy level with the loss of sediment. But of course, the main challenge will be, or the great impact will be coming from the increase of the sea level. You may see that from the study of Molina. Well, she said that by studying the mariographers in two specific spots in Marseille and Alicante, it's seen that the sea is grown some 16 centimeters. The first records are coming from 1890. But that increase has taken place during the last 80 years. So the Mediterranean shores have receded some 0.5 meters every year. So this is from the Institute for Water Education of the UNESCO, also based on this scene, and it foresees a situation similar to the one we've been mentioning, and with a 0.5 scenario of emissions by 2050. Most of those situations, of those locations you see in the Mediterranean Sea, will have receded between 20 and 25 meters in their coastline. So we're talking about a disappearance of about 80% of the beaches we know. But if we go down to 2100, we see that the recession, the receding of the coastline, the sediment loss will amount to about 80 to 50 meters for most of the beaches in the Mediterranean shores. So it's a very worrying situation. And of course, people already know about this. Awareness is growing. We know that either we take measures of about 36,000 meters of sand beaches in Europe are going to disappear, and we're going to be suffering from losses of many kinds. And what is that we can do? What is that we scientists can do? We can all do something, but from the point of view of scientists, how can we make a contribution in this sense? Of course, the monitoring of coastal erosion has improved a lot in the last 15 years with the use of drones, the land laser scanning, with elements, tools which help us be more efficient in terms of drawing. And I wanted to tell you, to let you know that science should be going hand in hand with citizenship. And we're talking about COSNAP, which is the Community Monitoring of Beaches. It's an initiative which aims at all people with an interest in the coastal line, because they visit them, can participate of the monitoring of this dynamic environment. So we're looking towards an understanding of beaches through the snapshots taken by people visiting the beaches. And this transforms the images that visitors take from a specific beach, and they turn them into tools which help us understand what's going on. And of course, it's got a social dimension, a very important coastal dimension and citizen dimension. And it will help science monitor and lead people to understand what is happening in dynamic environments such as the coastline, and promote the health and the well-being of coastal spaces. And as I was saying, these type of technologies are a very simple one, and probably if you go to beaches, you will see that these stations mean indeed. And what is this all about is just placing a stainless steel pole which is tied to a point of view or a passageway, which is usually located in a safe place. Also, they are going to be built, of course. Stainless steel is there because they are outdoors, but we have been looking for environmentally friendly materials. They are placed in locations which are very widely visited, and spaces that we know that are changing a lot. And what you do is to place your mobile phone there and take a picture. And that's the picture that will later on allow us, all those pictures will allow us to understand what's going on. And very briefly, this initiative was born in Australia, but it's already out there in some 16 countries, and there are more than 110 picturing stations like the ones you've seen. And in the Mediterranean Sea, we are waking up now, but I think in a few years, all that basin will count on stations and monitoring bases, including this initiative. We are placing our little contribution there. We have placed 6 new bases, one of them in the beaches of Marbella, another one in Salobreña in the province of Granada. And that will allow us to understand what's happening in these beaches. And as I was saying, the methodology is a very simple one, and what people will be able to see will be just a standing point for people's mobile phone to be placed, and with a QR code, if they take up a picture of it, they will get the website on which to upload their picture, and they can interact with the rest of pictures and see which were other pictures uploaded by other people. And once the picture is uploaded, well, you see, in many of the pictures sending the pictures, they visit that beach almost every day, because either they live there or during their holidays they spend a lot of time at that beach. So we're asking them about their perception on how the place is changing, either because there has been a storm very recently, or because the tides are coming or going, or maybe there was an anthropic flattening of the sand or a rebuilding of the sand because of municipal initiatives. So people will be monitoring the system. Of course, behind these, there's not just the capturing of pictures. We use a technique called photogrammetry, so all pictures should be taken with the same angle and from the same spot, so we can extract that coastline with a very precise approach. And with that, in that way, and taking into account all the pictures taken at different points in the year, we can see how that coastline is changing, and we can be understanding how that system is working. I don't know if you will be able to see the video. Well, it is not running, but anyway, you've got it in the internet, and this is one of the dissemination efforts. And you will be able to see how this beach, in this case we're talking about Australia, has been changing for a year. In the diagram below, you may see the width of the beach. You see how it goes from 40. If you put the cursor on the square, maybe you click on it, it won't work. It was just a video, but anyway, it's in YouTube, and you may see how that beach is changing all throughout the year, and you may also see how the people contributing to picture taking, you may see how the beach is being transformed. And just to finish, there's a remark I would like to make. Coastal erosion is of course not a young issue, but it poses a series of management problems associated with changes. The Mediterranean coast is very vulnerable to coastal erosion because of the anthropization of the coast, and saturation is going to be accentuated not just because of the processes we've seen, but also it will lead to social, economic, and environmental stresses, which will be a challenge for decision makers having to do with the management of coasts. And of course, we've got to break up that wall, that barrier between society, managers, and scientists. So people are also participants in the solution, because everyone wants to enjoy the coasts of the future. That's all on my side.
Pues muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much to all my fellow speakers. As a moderator of this roundtable, I would like to highlight that DEEPMED is devoted to the profundities of the Mediterranean history and the features of the changing seabed as part of the coastal areas being affected, as the profundities and the seabed, which is being now recently explored, and the oceans in the high seas. We had never imagined that it could be changing, and we didn't see it as part of a system affecting the shorelines. These three exhibitions have helped us talk about different areas of the ocean: the global ecosystem, the second one being the part of the sea on the shoreline, and then the land by the shoreline. So this interaction between these three areas are part of a larger system. So having said this, we'll open the Q&A session. Should you have any comments or queries, any of my fellow colleagues or members of the audience, please feel free. Good afternoon. My question is for Professor Tovar. The Touritron program is tomorrow live, right? It's a documentary filmed on our project. It'll be on the telly on Saturday, after tomorrow, at noon on Canal Sur. I believe it's at noon, yes. But it's not tomorrow, it's after tomorrow on Saturday. Yes, Saturday. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much to all these speakers, Emilia, Antonio, and Juan. The truth is that I'm speechless, having listened to this wonderful, amazing information that you've shared with us. I'd like to reflect and mention something to Antonio regarding sunscreen. I feel a little bit shocked because I don't expose myself I don't bask in the sun, but sometimes I feel that if we protect ourselves and at the same time we're polluting the environment, what can we do? What's the solution? Yeah, that's $1 million question. Look, in all papers that we've published during all the projects, we always state the same. We don't have the solution because we don't manufacture the products. This impact is caused by these products. We're only claiming we lack the capacity of manufacturing and 100% environmentally friendly sunscreen. If the titanium dioxide is pollutant, any sunscreen, several well-known ones, eliminate this titanium oxide and they label it as environmentally friendly. And the National Institute of Science in Spain has realized that it is not true. We have retested these products and we see that they have oxybenzone, which whitens coral reefs. It's forbidden in Hawaii. For example, in some other island countries, they have been forbidden because they seriously damage the coral reef. An environmentally friendly sunscreen does not exist yet. All the samples we've tested have had negative results. I have an 18-month baby, and he doesn't bask under the sun because the sunscreen on his skin is more harmful than for my baby to lie under the sun, right? So what I can do is get him wearing one of these neoprene long sleeve bathing suits, you know. Unfortunately, there is not an ecologic or environmentally friendly sunscreen, at least that we know. Maybe there's been a product created that we don't know of or we have not tasted without the will of harming any single company. Our only goal is to find out whether they are environmentally friendly. In some papers, we have read that they haven't been identified in mother's milk, breast milk. So imagine up to where this toxicity is reaching. It's amazing. I lack some answers. ISDIN, Nivea, these large companies contacting and working, collaborating with us, sometimes, unfortunately, it gets to a halt because we're almost the enemy. We are not convenient to them. So this is where we are. It is very frustrating. It's horrendous. It's the way things are. Thank you very much for your presentations and your project. I believe it's fundamental to highlight this link between social sciences and pure science. And in this sense, thinking about the action, because at the end of the day, the Mediterranean is a single body of water. I wonder whether you have networks amongst these research or oceanographic institutes around the Mediterranean, allowing us to have a more global vision, not only a Spanish perspective of what the situation looks like. Juan, would you like to answer? He's a member of the Spanish Oceanography Institute, which has always been working along these lines. Yes, as Antonio mentions, the Oceanography Spanish Institute was founded in 1914 to collaborate and do plenty of research around the Mediterranean every 2 or 3 years. I believe it's now every 2 years we organize a meeting with other members around the Mediterranean basin with a commission which was created by this group of experts, the Prince of Monaco, the great-great-grandfather of the current Monaco king, and also in Madrid. In one of these numerous working groups, one of the major working groups recently is the pollutant one. So all these countries welcome their researchers and professors. You can Google it. All the congresses, most of them, at least the ones dating back to the last 15 years. So we elaborate common charts. Every single country offers and adds more information. And also there are other global projects using this data. As our colleagues said in their presentations, We can add on with different data. Every single country, of course, prioritizes their own waters, but they are all interlinked, and they can double-check whether the data that you're finding in your water territories are better, are true, and you can obviously compare with data from other countries, neighboring countries. If you need to broaden your geographical area, then you can, thanks to this shared data. As for the program you mentioned, it's called Protected Space, Espacio Protegido, and it'll be on Canal Sur at 12:45. Any other common questions? I have a question for Emilia. Thanks to some fellow colleagues working on coastal issues, I have some information. Also, I'm a chemist, so all these soft engineering works, you know, these refilling of sandy areas or these impact studies regarding pollution, do these studies, are they usually done? Well, usually what we do is where the sand will come from. Our engineers help us. Also, we do some environmental impact studies as for whether this is going to impact species in that habitat, but we could use trackers to find out whether those sands are already polluted or not. I remember a case, I wasn't born, but I remember a beach that was recessing and it was refilled, and this sand had plenty of this mineral material, and it was a disaster because it had limestone, and it sort of compacted the sand. It came from a quarry nearby, and it was a big issue. So as for pollutants, I don't know, but when it comes to beach regeneration, they study some other values. For example, turbidity of waters, because it could affect other fisheries, you know, if the turbidity levels, if you're not familiar with it, sediments usually gather every single matter of pollutant components. 90% is accumulated on the sediment. So if you don't touch it, it lays, it remains there. So most of those chemical components go back to the water column, and again we face the problem again. So it's very important when we drain ports or marinas, when this drainage is done, these studies are very necessary. But we always have financial limitations, but it's still worth mentioning. As for Professor Tovar, as for the drones, we've seen that they've flown over volcanoes or the Antarctica. I wonder whether they use lithium batteries, which are very sensitive to temperature changes. Have you done any sort of research as to warming up these batteries in the Antarctic or cooling them down in La Palma near the volcanoes? You're right. When we worked in the Antarctica for the first time, we wanted to prove their drones' potential, and we had to modify them. One of the major issues being during the first flights that the fact that the drone wouldn't launch wouldn't start because their batteries were too cold. So in the base, before we went to the flying area, we had to carry these batteries inside our waistcoats, to keep them warm with our body temperature. And also the time the flight lasts has been shortened. Sorry. The Condor drones, the ones that the emergency unit use, this equipment has a flying time of 40 minutes, around 35 in the Antarctica. It was shortened down to 10 minutes due to the cold temperatures and the wind. The wind was horrendous. And, it was very, very tricky to keep it at the right position. So these repositioning activities, it really consumed the batteries. So they only lasted 10 minutes. We needed to keep changing them. And as for La Palma, during the volcanic eruption, one of the drones was burned, actually. And we must admit that we were not really prudent. We are not geologists nor experts in volcanoes. We just managed the drone. So when we took those water samples and we wanted to establish the chart and the positioning of the lava front, specifically the inhabitants, the locals, because they were really panicking about their houses, their properties. So flying at a very low level and trying to elaborate these positioning and how the lava was advancing was really, really hard. That information is vital for the locals, as I say, because we were able to predict whether the lava was going to change the course or approach certain houses or not. Well, I've been really interested between the link with the high seas, the seabed, with submarines, and also this emphasis of the three presentations on the importance of new technologies for the present and future research. They define the sort of policies that will be adopted soon. So what I wanted to say, as we mentioned before, DEEPMED, working on the profundities of the sea, these new technologies I see that can now be linked with a historic project. It's been more evident with Professor Rubín's presentation, but the interest on the question of where do these new technologies come from and where do these issues we face, like today, like marine resources, fisheries, pollution, etc., could help us establish new connections, links with social researchers, scientists, history of science and technology, and general experts. So I hope we will be friends for a long, long time. And if you allow me, I believe that we could conclude this Congress. So thank you very much to all the participants, to all of our speakers, and thank you to our interpreters.